Pokemon Ultra Sun is known for being one of the hardest Pokemon games of all time. With that knowledge, knowing it'd be a terrible idea, I still attempted to beat this game using Nuzlocke rules and only Dark types. This region has tons of totems and trainers alike ready to make my Dark types disappear, but with that, I can't put this off any longer as I head into the game and pick my starter, Litten. Litten isn't a Dark type, but he evolves into one, so we won't trash him like we usually do. After nearly losing my life trying to impress this girl, she hands me a sparkling stone used for Z moves, which kinda just feels like a slap in the face since I won't be using any of those throughout the run. Lily then tells me to keep her Cosmog a secret, and sure, I'll do that. Hey, have you seen that girl with the weird Pokemon in her bag? I witnessed Kukui doing some training with his Pokemon, and this actually reminds me that I can catch a few of my own. This game has a ridiculous number of Dark types you can find in just the first area, and I start by getting a Rattata, Inkay, and Zorua. After eliminating all the preschoolers I can find, I can move past the trainer school onto the first city. This is where I find an Alolan Grimer that I quickly catch, then Lily asks me if I pick out my own clothes, and yeah, of course I do. Usually this initial fight with Captain Lima is really difficult, but since I had so many Pokemon on my team, I actually wasn't worried. A simple pivot wins me the battle, and after moving on to the next route, I realize I can catch two more Pokemon. The first is this Alolan Meowth that I nicknamed Payday, then after dealing with these numbskulls in Big Wave Beach, I move on to the cemetery and catch a Murkrow. I've already got a full team of 6, but trust me, that doesn't mean anything as my first grand trial is fighting types, and that's gonna be dreadful. To get there, I've got to challenge the first totem in Verdant Cavern, but before I get there, I run around for a little bit with my Alolan Meowth to raise my friendship to eventually evolve him into a Persian. This design is the worst. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't look good. I'm not really too worried about looks though, as if he can get the job done against Totem Gumshoos, then we'll be alright. For the most part, he did, as he is the move Swift that hits the ally and totem as well. Eventually, he was brought pretty low, so I swapped into my Rattata and finished off the totem with a quick attack. Progressing in the game, I find a Sharpbeak, which will help in the next grand trial as I then go to Melee Meadow, meet up with Lily, and find out that she's missing her Cosmog again. Here's an idea: if you don't want people finding out about it, maybe just don't let it out of the bag. Saving Cosmog puts me in a fight with this guy named Dulce, who's a little bit of a weirdo and only has a Furfrou, so I deal with him pretty easily. Just so you know, man, Lily's got the Cosmog, the girl in the white hat. After defeating my rival, I start to plan for my first grand trial, and honestly, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Originally, I thought my Murkrow could sweep the entire thing, as I led the fight with him going for a wing attack, taking Machop down into the red. Unfortunately, the solution is never that easy, as I got clocked by a Revenge that brought me all the way down to 4 HP, but after a few more wing attacks, I was able to move on to the next Pokemon, Makahita. He's got priority fake out, so I swapped into Inkay to hopefully absorb some damage. This guy's got no concept of the ability Contrary, as he just kept raising my accuracy using Sand Attack. Turns like that allowed me to set up a Reflect and take him down with a couple of Psy Waves. Crabrawler's last, and I know he's gonna go for his fighting type Z move, so I send in a Pokemon that's a little bit more expendable. Sorry, Rattata, I'll make sure you go down in the history books. With the free switch, I bring in my Grimer and start to go for Acid Spray to lower his special defense stat. Once I've done that twice, I send in my Persian to go for a Swift, and with that, I've won the battle. We took our first death in that fight, and with the difficulty of this game, I doubt it'll be our last. Using my Tauros Ride Pager, I slam my face into some rocks to gain a few useful items, then I meet up with the Alolan version of Professor Oak. After becoming a professional Mantine surfer, I meet up with the rest of the gang in Akala Island. Here, I found myself in another rival battle, but since Alolan Hop is basically fodder in the early game, I wasn't too worried about it. Gladion could have been a bit more tricky as he's got a type Null, but I have a Persian who's pretty good at dealing with him. Our next battle is against Totem Araquanid, and he's a major problem. Since he's part bug, he has Stab super effective Leech Life, which means he can heal basically any damage he takes. On top of that, I don't have any Pokemon tanky enough to survive his attacks, so I fixed that problem by catching this Eevee. This is another friendship evolution, so I run around with him at the front of my party until I get myself an Umbreon. This should solve that bug situation for now, as I lead the fight with Grimer, as Araquanid starts by going for a Bubble. This damage is boosted by the rain and his ability, which means I'm at 21 HP going for a Poison Gas that thankfully lands. With Araquanid taking consistent damage, he calls down an ally in Dewpider, so I swap into my Umbreon. He doesn't take that much from a pair of bubbles, so I go for a Confuse Ray on the next turn to hopefully get him to hit himself. Sadly, he doesn't, which leaves my Umbreon on the red, meaning I have to switch out. I send in Payday, and he takes loads of damage on the switch in, and on the next turn, I kinda have to set up a Screech. Thankfully, Araquanid hits himself, allowing me to survive the turn at 3 HP. At this point, I need a free switch into my Murkrow, but there's not really any Pokemon I have that I'm willing to get rid of. In the end, I determined the best course of action is to go for a bite with my Persian, which does a lot of damage to Araquanid, but unfortunately causes him to go down. Murkrow was able to win the rest of the fight thanks to a pair of wing attacks, but if we were on Ultra Moon, this would have been so much easier. We would have had a Volibee, which would have been really useful against this annoying insect. We're officially back down to 5 team members, and as I'm leaving the trial site, I see the Sudowoodo that I end up scaring the crap out of. I didn't even know those Pokemon were capable of running. In the next town, we find ourselves in the original Battle Royale, fighting against a random pro wrestler, Gladion, and my rival. I wish I could have taken out his Dartrix, but unfortunately, it's a little too tanky. This place also has a supermarket, and apparently I grabbed this guy's coupon so fast, you literally couldn't see it. I'm done playing around though, as my next totem is against a Alolan Marowak, and this could be really difficult for me. This is the only trial in the game where you have to take on multiple consecutive trainers before even facing the totem. On top of that, it's got Brick Break, which is super effective against most of my team, and its ally Salazzle is a fully evolved Pokemon. Still, we do have a type advantage with Alolan Marowak being part Ghost, and by playing it smart, we can go into the battle having taken no damage on my Inkay. On the first turn, he protects to allow his ally to come down, then on the next, I get hit by a few attacks before going for a foul play, which brings Marowak down to about a 4th. Now we pivot into Umbreon as he can eat both attacks on the switch in. With that, I need to tank 2 more, but I should be fine with the HP I have available, and thankfully I survived some attacks and was able to finish off the Marowak with an assurance. All that's left is the ally Salazzle, and with a combination of Airhead and Push Pop, she was taken care of. By the way, if you find out what the nickname theme is, leave it in the comments down below. I'll be liking every correct answer. 3rd trial down, and on my way to the 4th, I see Colress, who gives me a really important TM, but still looks as stupid as ever, as he's got that weird Saturn thing around his head. Yeah, it's dumb. We've then got to go through this Festival Plaza stuff, and its main use is for connecting you with online friends, but I'm a Pokemon content creator. I don't have those. In sorrow, I head into the lush jungle and craft this beautiful soup, and this totem Pokemon comes to steal it from me. Could this day get any worse? Lurantis starts this battle at +2 speed, but to be honest, this is one of my easier totems, as Grimer has the move Poison Fang that's super effective. This move also has a 50% chance to badly poison its target, which is exactly what it does in the first turn. Typically, Lurantis relies on healing itself, though it can't do that very efficiently when it's taking tons of residual damage. That, on top of the super effective moves I had, meant that this fight was over pretty quickly. Before facing my grand trial, I decided to go back to Melemele Island, where I find myself this Sableye. After refusing to get in the ball, I eventually catch him and give him the nickname Hershey. I then witness Lily, quote, acting like me, but that's just an insult, as she used the move Splash, and I would never do that. She's basically just calling me bad, though now that I think about it, with the way the rest of this run's gonna go, I honestly don't blame her. We've still got 2 fairy totems, a fighting one, and a whole bunch of other trainers that are gonna make my life miserable. First on that list is Olivia, and I meet her in the Diglett Tunnel, where I can catch myself another team member. This is Larvitar, who's not currently a dark type, but he evolves into one at level 55. At least we'll have him for the Elite Four. After taking care of some Team Skull members with my rival, I meet this Probopass who's got a letter for me. It was so weird. He wanted to let me know that only 13% of my viewers were actually subscribed. Why would he tell me something like that? If you made it this far, leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Shameless plugs aside, it's high time we face Olivia in our second grand trial. She leads the battle with Anorith as I bring out my Grimer, who has super effective Rock Tomb. After we both exchange blows and I lower its speed, I swap out into my Murkrow to go for a wing attack. That forces Olivia into her next fossil Pokemon, so I pivot into Umbreon to go for workups. Since Laleep is incapable of dealing major damage, I freely set up a few of those while mixing in some Confuse Rays to hopefully get her to hit herself. Any damage I do actually take is healed by Leftovers recovery, so after taking Laleep down, I can move on to the final Pokemon Lycanroc. Even though my attack stat is super high, I can't one-shot, and I get flinched over and over again. To avoid this, I just slowly took out the rest of his HP with Quick Attack, and with that, I've won my second grand trial and can move on to the Aether Paradise. In this place, we meet a whole bunch of interesting characters. Faba, Lusamine, and this monster from space? Yeah, we got out of there as soon as possible and headed straight to Ula Ula Island. It was at this point that I had realized earlier in the run, I made a huge mistake. After evolving my Inkay into Malamar, I saw I didn't actually learn the move Topsy-Turvy. If you don't know what that move does, it basically just reverse stat changes, so by using it on a totem Pokemon, it getting an Omni boost would be an Omni bad? I didn't really put that right, but you know what I mean. I thought Malamar relearned this move upon evolution, as earlier in the game I got rid of it because it wasn't going to be useful during the fighting grand trial. Turns out I was very wrong, and now I'm missing out on a key resource that I could have used against every single remaining totem. I guess the more you know. After evolving my Zorua into a Zoroark, I go take on my rival. He does have 5 different Pokemon, but with my 2 new evolutions, my team is stronger than it's ever been, so I can deal with him pretty easily. I then meet up with the Alolan version of Professor Oak, who tries to talk to me about regional variants like I don't already know what those things are. You literally are one. On Route 10, I catch a new team member, Pancham, in a dive ball. I'm really running out of resources here. I make sure to evolve him into Pangoro, then I backtrack and buy a whole bunch of useful TMs for this upcoming totem. On Mount Lanakili, I put Incineroar back on the team and also witness this poor Charjabug run for its life. I can totally understand why he did that, as we nearly assassinated him with this Vikavolt. For Totem Togedemaru, I led with Incineroar and started with a Bulldoze. This move was 4 times super effective and barely did a third, which allowed Togedemaru to call down its ally, Dedenne. After a few more of those, I was brought pretty low, so I swapped into Pangoro to carry on the torch. This led to me taking down the SOS Pokemon and Togedemaru healing with a Citrus Berry. With about half his HP remaining, he goes for a bounce, so I send in my Malamar to tank it. Skarmory then gets called down as I go for a Reflect, then hit Togedemaru with a Foul Play. At this point, I was a little bit worried about Skarmory's ability to set up Tailwind, so I swapped into my Umbreon as he'll be able to tank any damage I take. With the leftovers and Moonlight Recovery, I was able to stay in for long enough to eventually take down the Togedemaru with assurance. Last was Skarmory, who wasn't really much of a problem after I lowered his defense with a couple of screeches. That's the 5th trial in the books, and as I head back down the mountain, I see Guzma, who I know is going to be a really big problem for me. He reps bug types, which is a major weakness for my dark type team. Currently, his team's only got 2 Pokemon, so it's not that hard to beat him, though as we progress, his team will get stronger and stronger, which is definitely not something I'm ready for. In the next town, I beat up all the preschoolers I can, as I'm pretty angry about the fact that I have to face up against Totem Mimikyu. Before the battle, I evolved my Grimer into a Muck, and this is who I decided to lead with. On the first turn, I went for a Disable, as I knew Mimikyu was going to go for its strongest attack in Play Rough. This will help to increase my survivability, as a Leech Life doesn't deal too much. I heal with a Citrus Berry, get burned by Will-O-Wisp, and then connect with a Poison Fang. This badly poisoned Mimikyu, but she healed it with a Lumberry. So she thought. My ability is Poison Touch, which gives me a 30% chance to poison anything I make contact with. It actually activated, which poisoned the Mimikyu because it no longer has a Lumberry. With Mimikyu's disguise broken, I bring in Umbreon, who's immediately forced to switch out for Pangoro. By going for a Bulldoze, I can lower the speed of everything on the field, but this leaves me with 37 remaining. Looking to switch, I bring in my Malamar, who takes big damage from a Play Rough since it's no longer disabled, then gets hit by a Curse. That damage takes the Bayonet down, but also me with him. With the free switch, I bring out my Incineroar, who can pretty easily win the rest of this fight with Darkest Lariat. That battle would have been nearly impossible deathless, and if I was going to lose anybody there, Malamar is definitely my best choice, as I already messed him up with that whole topsy-turvy thing. After the trial, I get laughed at for being scared of ghosts, and then fight Team Skull, who's not an issue as usual. For whatever reason, they stole this preschooler's Pokemon, and I know, I've got beef with them too, but come on, dude, why would you do that? As I'm heading to their secret hideout, I wonder, why is there a golfer in this meadow? He says if I want to know, I've got to defeat every trainer here, and I'm not gonna do that. If you know, just tell me in the comments, but I'm gonna progress in the game as there's a ton of Pokemon I can catch now. To start, I catch a Scraggy that I immediately evolve into Scrafty, then get my hands on this Bisharp. After rearranging my team, I find out that Team Skull's got a secret, not so secret base. As I'm raiding it, I get into a fight with Guzma, and this doesn't go well for me. I led with Bisharp so I wouldn't take too much damage from a first impression, then after a couple of aerial aces, he got swapped out by his ability Emergency Exit. As Pinsir was thrown in, I swap into Muck to take neutral damage from a Circle Throw. Knowing that Pinsir's no longer going for Circle Throw, I send in Incineroar, who eats an X-Scissor, bringing me down to 89 remaining. After some leftovers recovery, I go for a pair of Flame Charges that takes the Pinsir down. Guzma's back on Glycopod, so I pivot into Umbreon to tank some damage, then get my defense dropped by a Razor Shell. I tried to go for a Moonlight to regain some HP, but with my defense being dropped a second time, I was forced to switch into Pangoro. At this point, I had already taken damage on the switch in, and now all I could hope for was a high damage roll with the Rock Slide that I unfortunately didn't get. Left with a sliver, he goes for a Razor Shell that takes out my Pangoro. The rest of this fight was an easy sweep by Incineroar, though it sucks to have lost my fighting type just before the Dark Grand Trial. Thankfully, I can replace him with an even better Pokemon in this Krokorok that I evolved into Crocodile. Thankfully, he's got the ability Moxie, which is going to be incredibly useful going forward. As I'm figuring out where to go next, Gladion just attacks me, I guess because his sister got stolen by Team Skull, but that's kind of her fault, because, I mean, have you seen the thing in her bag? Regardless, his team isn't much stronger than it was before, so this is an easy battle, and afterwards, I can go fight the Dark-type trainer, Nanu. This is the Island Kahuna, but to be honest, he doesn't fight like it. Starting out, I immediately two-shot the Sableye with a pair of Darkest Lariats, then I brought out my Umbreon to counter the next Pokemon Krokorok. We both ended up confusing each other as this prompted a switch into Scrafty, and Nanu healed because he's a dirty cheater. Scrafty then got hit by a Swagger, which raised my attack by 2 stages, but also confused me. This guy's a champ as he breaks through the confusion, getting a one-shot in the process, which brings me on to the final Pokemon, Persian. The biggest problem with her is the design, as I can still one-shot, then head over to the Aether Paradise. Guzma is the main threat, but it should be fine because Gladion faced him first, so his Pokemon should be low, right? Never mind, they're all at full HP. Gladion, what did you do? To start the battle, I went for a Crunch, as Glycopod connected with a Razor Shell, and on the next turn, I went for a Disable. Glycopod only has 3 moves, one of which only activates on the first turn, the other only when I attack him. By getting rid of Razor Shell, I've essentially made it so that he can't deal any damage to me, so I bring in my Incineroar and start going for Bulk Up. After 4, I was able to one-shot the entire team, remaining faster than them thanks to my move Flame Charge. Last in the Aether Paradise is Lusamine, who's an absolute weirdo as she just freezes Pokemon for fun. Somehow she's figured out about Cosmog, but I don't know how that happened. It certainly doesn't have anything to do with me. Okay, maybe I told one too many people. Even though she's got a handful of super effective moves, my battle against her isn't that bad as she likes to make really dumb moves with her Pokemon. She did bring my Incineroar down to 7 HP though. Lusamine and Guzma teleport away in an Ultra Wormhole, so I guess we won't have to worry about them for a while. Getting back on track, I go over to Pony Island where I rearrange my team a bit and finally can evolve my Murkrow into a Honchkrow. Still as frail as ever, but at least it has the potential to help in my next Grand Trial against Totem Komodo. I lead this fight with Umbreon, who gets hit for some major damage by Drain Punch, though I can get off a Toxic, which is my strategy for winning this battle. In the Aether Foundation, we got access to this move, and it takes 6 turns to fully KO a target, assuming it doesn't heal. To avoid Drain Punch being a huge factor, I swap into my Sableye, who's part Ghost, and fully avoids the fighting type moves. This, in tandem with Fake Out and Protect, allows me to live for a long time, which eventually causes the totem to fall. Now it's time to do a whole bunch of story, where apparently my flute skills were so bad, Necrozma had to come and steal the light away from Alola. Yikes. That's my bad, guys. I'll go fix it. Normally, the fight against Ultra Necrozma is one of the hardest in the game, but I think I can get through it with only 1 death. By leading with Umbreon with a Zoom Lens, I can go for a Toxic that's guaranteed to land. On the next turn, I want to stall a little bit longer, so I go for a Protect, then unfortunately, I watch my Umbreon go down. This sacrifice was essential and will definitely not be in vain, as I needed a free switch into my Zoroark. Equipped with a Focus Sash to survive any attack, I get ready to go for a Foul Play. The damage this move does is scaled upon the opposing Pokemon's attack stat, and since Ultra Necrozma is extremely strong, this move does a ton of damage and is able to take out all of his remaining HP. That right there is death number 5, and I can't say it'll be our last. Umbreon's with my Rattata though, down in the history books he goes. One last totem on the chopping block, and it could be the hardest one I've had yet, as after traveling the entire Alola region to gather some stupid flower petals, I eventually summon Totem Ribombee. I lead the battle with Muck as Ribombee sets up a Quiver Dance, and I go for a Toxic to badly poison her. I then go for a Protect, as my main goal now is to stall for time. After I somehow survive a +3 Bug Buzz, I get off a Poison Fang that's super effective, but still doesn't do that much. One more Protect and Ribombee's in the red, though there's really not much more I can do with Muck. There's not a single Pokemon on my team that can survive a +3 Bug Buzz as well as a Scald from Pelipper, so I decide to send in my Sableye. This was another another useful sacrifice as it took the Ribombee down, leaving only Pelipper remaining. Bisharp did the rest, and with that, I've officially defeated my final totem and can move on to my last grand trial. Hapu's just a kid and truly can't compete against my Crocodile. On the first turn, I go for a bulk up, increasing my attack and defense as Golurk sets up a stealth rock. I'm back at it again with another bulk up as Hammer Arm connects, leaving me at 99 remaining. At this point, I can one-shot her entire team as Crunch is super effective, and with the Moxie boost I gain from each KO, my attack just keeps getting higher. She did give me a little bit of a scare as her Flygon was faster than me and almost took me down, but we won, so we're all good. With the level cap having increased to 60, I can finally put Tyranitar on the team. This led me on to a fight with Gladion, which my Tyranitar ended up being a major help in. As usual, he loses and is incredibly angry about it. This guy's the biggest sore loser in the game. Oh, never mind. I guess his reaction a second ago wasn't real. As I progress in Victory Road, I run into Necrozma, and yeah, let me just squeeze right past you. I'll see you later. Further in the area, I find and catch a Sneasel that I put on my team instead of Bisharp, as I can immediately evolve him into a Weavile. This Elite Four is one of the hardest in the entire Pokemon franchise, as Z moves are incredibly overpowered. Still, I make sure to adjust my team and get my movesets right as I head into my easiest Elite Four matchup against Acerola, as I have a type advantage against her ghosts. Acerola leads a battle with Bayonet as I send in my Weavile to go for a pair of Hone Claws. This gets me to +2 before Bayonet can deal any real damage, and with a Night Slash, I take the Oko. That brings out this Anchor, whose name I can't properly pronounce. Still was able to one-shot with Night Slash, but I can't say the same about the following Pokemon Palisand. Night Slash has 70 base power and would leave her with a sliver. Thankfully, Palisand is also part ground, which means my Ice-type moves are super effective, and this allows for my 75 base power Ice Punch to take the KO. Second to last is Frostlass, and I honestly thought I'd be faster, but after getting hit by a Confuse Ray, I was a little worried. I was able to break through it, moving me on to the final Pokemon Drifbloom, so I swapped into my Tyranitar, as this is a terrible matchup. For her, obviously, as my Tyranitar has multiple moves that are super effective, and after defeating her, she's shocked for some reason. I had Dark types, this was fated. Olivia and her rocks are next, as she leads with Armaldo, and I send in my Crocodile. On the first turn, I risk a crit by going for a bulk up, as it's essential for the rest of this battle. Luckily, I don't get hit by the 1 in 16 chance, surviving at 51 HP, and on the next turn, I can go for an Earthquake that takes the KO. This gives me a Moxie boost, increasing my attack stat by a stage, as the next Pokemon to come in is Cradally. At +2, I just barely have enough attack to one-shot, and with that, I'm faster than all of Olivia's remaining Pokemon. Sadly, there's no one-shotting Probopass thanks to her ability Sturdy, so I swap into my Scrafty to hopefully take her down. Sadly, I ended up missing a high jump kick, taking nearly all my HP in the process, but it was alright. We hit one on the next turn, so we're fine. Last up was Gigalith, so I thought I could just switch into Tyranitar, but I was wrong, as I immediately got crit by an Iron Head, taking a lot of my HP. Sending in Muck, I won the fight with a Toxic Stall, which allowed me to move on to the third Elite Four member, Mullane. For this fight, we went for a strategy that was eerily similar to the last, as we started with a few bulk ups, then a bunch of Earthquakes. Thankfully, against his entire team, we're either super effective or really super effective. After each KO, we get stronger and stronger until eventually we're onto the last Mon Magnezone, who I am quad effective against. Funnily enough, it's the only Pokemon we can't one-shot due to that pesky ability Sturdy. Still, Incineroar makes quick work of him, which allows me to move on to the final member, Kahili. Normally, flying types would be easy for us to deal with, but she's got a Hawlucha with Flying Press, which makes things a whole lot more difficult. I lead with Weavile and start by going for a Hone Claws as Braviary hits me with a Scary Face, lowering my speed by 2 stages. That allowed him to outspeed, connecting with a Brave Bird that brought me all the way down to 3 HP. That was terrifying, but after another Hone Claws, I'm at +2 attack, so I can go for an Ice Shard that has priority and can take out the Braviary. That brought out the dreaded Hawlucha, but since I have priority, I don't actually have to worry about outspeeding. I can simply just go for Ice Shard, and since he has an abysmal defense stat, this is enough to KO. Now here's where I make a questionable decision against the third Pokemon, Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz is a tank, and for whatever reason, I thought I could KO with Ice Shard. Obviously, I was wrong, then got KO'd by a Brave Bird, which really sucks because I just lost a Pokemon for no reason. Not really sure what I was thinking, but with the free switch, I swapped into my Tyranitar, then I got confused and took out the Mandibuzz with a Rock Slide. Even though I was confused, I could do the same thing to the following 2 Pokemon, Toucannon and Oricorio, and with that, I could move on to the final trainer of the region, Cuckoo. Wait, no, my rival? He starts with an Alolan Raichu as I send in my Muck, who gets paralyzed by a Thunderbolt on the first first turn. Not really starting on the greatest note, as after I eat another Thunderbolt, I'm left in the red and can take down the Raichu using Crunch. Next up is Tauros, who has super effective Earthquake against most of my team, so rather than swapping out, I decide to sacrifice my Muck in order to get a free switch into Scrafty. Scrafty's got the move High Jump Kick, and if that move were to miss, I'd lose another Pokemon for no reason. Though, as Abraham Lincoln once said, you gotta risk it for the biscuit, so that's exactly what I do, and thankfully, it lands. This brings out the third Pokemon Noivern, so I pivot into my Tyranitar to go for super effective Rock Slides. This doesn't kill, but it forces Hao to burn through all his full restores until eventually he decides to send in Crabominable just randomly. He had me panicking as I ended up making some questionable decisions trying to figure out what I needed to do. First, I swapped into my Scrafty, which wasn't a terrible decision as I needed a free switch into something. That free switch I used on Incineroar, who immediately got O-code by a Stone Edge. It's okay, that was totally necessary, as we wanted 2 free switches so I could bring in my Crocodile. A single Earthquake takes him down, handing me a Moxie boost going into the next Pokemon Vaporeon. At this point, my rival has me outnumbered, as he's got 3 Pokemon to my 2, though it really doesn't matter, as the more Pokemon on his team, the more Moxie boosts I get from my Crocodile. That being said, this fight gets out of hand, as eventually it becomes one shot after one shot until his entire team goes down, and with that, I can crown myself the champion of Alola. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, as I'd really appreciate it. Also, special thanks to the channel members, you guys are great. With that, I'll see you guys in the next one.